Ok, bienvenidos una vez más a otro encuentro en el Festival Black Canvas, la cuarta edición. Y estoy muy contento. Bueno, yo primero me presento, yo soy Rodrigo Garay, soy editor de la revista Correspondencias, la revista mexicana. Y estoy muy feliz de poder estar aquí con Matjaž Ivanišin, que es el director de una película que pudimos ver en esta edición híbrida, la pudimos ver en línea el viernes pasado. La película se llama Oroslan. Pero si por alguna razón se la perdieron en su paso por Filmin Latino, todavía van a poder verla este viernes en la Cineteca Nacional en sus primeras funciones. Si no mal no estoy, es como a las 2:30 de la tarde. Entonces estén al pendiente por si les interesa todavía ver Oroslan. Y bueno, estoy aquí para platicar con Matjaž, para hablar de sus procesos. Esta charla se va a realizar en inglés. Matjaž es de Eslovenia. Entonces, Matjaž, thank you very much. So we are on Facebook now, and we're very excited because I think your film it's a very sensitive and very quiet film that deals with a very strong emotional concept, which is, well, not concept, I mean, with death, right? And instead of going through or opting to show death in a very dramatic or impactful way, you chose to study or to observe the aftermath of a person's death in a very small community in Hungary, if I'm not mistaken. So to start talking about your film, Oroslan, I would love to begin with the beginning of the film, which is this very lovely sequence of I believe they are lunch boxes, and there's a delivery system in this small town. So I suppose some kind of restaurant prepares the food, and they deliver the food to different houses. And we closely follow this delivery guy putting lunch boxes in the people's homes. I really, really loved the way you introduced this into the town. And also this sequence serves to signal the person dying, which is a very clever way to do it, very subtle way. So my first question is, how did that idea of the lunchbox delivery system come to be?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for the invitation. When I decided to place the story in a small village in Hungary where Slovenian minority lives, so it's just across the border from Slovenia in Hungarian part, and the Slovenian minority lives there. And because the original story is a true story, but it happened in a totally another place, so in another town in small village in Slovenia, but more near the Italian border. But because I thought that I need a little bit of distance to the story, to the exact place where it really happened, because I sense that it's about not just about a specific story, I decided to move the original story to another place. And when I decided for this village in Hungary, I was thinking that I must leave one door open to the new environment that I'm dealing with. So I discovered this lunch deliveries there actually. So immediately I decided to place it in our story. It was not there from the beginning, but when I was looking for a location, when I was meeting people there, I also discovered this thing. So then I was thinking, okay, how can I invite this thing into my film? So basically, it is the thing that it's happening there every day. They're preparing food, and they're delivering it to some houses, to old people that maybe are not able to cook for themselves, or to some people that have problems, or so it was like that.
And I think because some of my questions later are going to be a little bit more technical, on the technical aspect, but this is like a very humane way of introducing the viewer to a community, to the dynamics of the community. This ties to my next question, which is the film, as the people can read in the synopsis when they watch the film, when they know that this movie is about a person dying in a small community, and how this death lives on or affects his neighbors, his friends, his family, etc. But what interests me is that I believe, I'm not sure because of the cultural difference, but I think this would be very, very different if you set the film in a city. Like when we experience death in a city, we are perhaps more detached. We have to deal with different things. And when you do it in a small town like you did, you can see how one death affects everyone, like the delivery system, because they don't have any more food and now they have to cook for the funeral, and how like the neighbors help each other. So can you tell me a little bit more about the daily life of this particular town, and why that was perfect for you to talk about death?
Yeah, I think you could also place it in the city, but it would be I think a different film. Maybe I mean the core of the film maybe it would be the same. You can speak about the things we are speaking in Oroslan also in the city, of course. But I decided to place it in this small village because of this close community, and also because the original story the film is based on is also coming from the small village in Slovenia. So that was my reason to do it. And the next thing I was trying to place or to look for a location in the territory where I found the main guy who is telling the story in the second part of the film, let's say. So when I found him, I decided to place the story somewhere around the place that he is living. Also because of the very strong dialect. They speak in this Slovenian minority very, very strong dialect. So also when we screen the film in Slovenia, we must use the subtitles for the Slovenian subtitles for the Slovenian dialect, let's say, because it's so strong, the dialect. And I was thinking that maybe it's also something that is important for the film, because okay, we are speaking about how someone dies, and then how his death, let's say, immediately some actions follows his death, a lot of actions, but then with a little bit of time distance, this action slowly becomes words, and these words stories describing his life, and that he's maybe let's say around this guy as long as he is present in the story, let's say, as long as he is present in the memory of people. And yes, one man can die, but also, or one man must die, but also it could happen with the language. So I think this dialect is slowly fading because not a lot of people still can speak the dialect. So the older people still do, but the younger ones are so. They have some problems to articulate things in these dialects. They speak mostly Hungarian.
Yes, actually, I was going to, like, I wanted to ask you about the population of the place, because I don't remember seeing any kids or young people. I don't think so. Like most of them are adults or older people that we can see. And that, I think that reinforces the feeling of a very secluded location, like very isolated location. Now, before, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I must just add to this that it is the way we decided to be for the story. Of course, you have also young people living there. It's not a one-to-one documentary thing. It's a mix of some documentary elements, but it's still a let's say a fiction thing. Um, so maybe in the third part, you have a sense that very young people are playing football there, or some in the summertime they are like together near the small lake. So yeah, it's more alive. But in the winter time, yeah, we decided to do it like that.
Oh yeah, well yes, that's because of there's a musical cue even for the last part in
Yeah.
the spring.
Yes.
But before the musical cue, just to finish the idea of the origin of the film, which is a short story that is not published even in your country. Of course, it's not available in my country either. But my question is, how much of the original text, which I believe was made for a theater play, like a company text for a theater play or something
Um,
like that?
no,
But
not really. It was actually the starting, let's say, point was the play they did in Slovenian National Theatre,
mhm,
but it was a play of by an Irish writer, Conor McPherson. So they stage it, but they also every time they do a play in the theater, they also publish, let's say, to you go and see the play in the theater, but you can also buy a small book with the text inside, with the
mhm,
photos from the rehearsals, the actors, something like that. And they also ask for this small, let's say, book. They also ask some people to write something about the, let's say, the text, about the author, etc., etc. And they also ask this our writer Zdravko Duša to write something about the way the storytelling, the Irish way of storytelling, how is presented in the text, this
mhm.
play. But instead of doing that, Zdravko Duša decided to write his own very personal story, that he would add his own way of writing, his own way of personal story to add, not talking about the Irish way of, let's say, drama, Irish drama, let's say. So by incident, I wrote what he wrote, and I was very moved by it. So I was starting to think maybe we can do a film with his elements, like to also speak about that, but at the same time to speak about our need to be together, to share stories, to speak about storytelling. Um, so it was actually like that. Conor McPherson play in theater, Zdravko Duša writing his own story for this small book, and the film is, let's say, our response to Zdravko Duša's text. Let's say.
Yes, and from what I understood, it's mostly based on the story that we hear on the second part of the film,
Yes.
the brother.
Yes.
So yes, my original question was going to be, how much did you take from Dusha's text to the script, and how much did the actor perform himself or add to the story?
Yeah, when I decided not to place the film in the original, let's say, village of Zdravko Duša, because it's a true story based on true events, I decided maybe that maybe I need a little bit of distance to the story, to be more close to the, let's say, core or to the origin of story. So by going to another location, I was thinking maybe I can be there more close to the story. It's not a documentary thing, as I said. So when I decided to place the film in Porabia, in Hungarian part, I thought that I must let's say include also their own stories from the new environment there and to mix it with the original story. So let's say that in second part, almost everything is from the story. Just one or two stories are his own personal stories from like actors, his own stories. And the first, let's say first chapter of the film is more or less Zdravko Duša story, but put in the new environment with this extra delivery of food. So everything they do, it was in the story. So, and the third part of the film is mostly just from the new environment, as they are describing the Oroslan, how he was when he was alive. So I would say that this Oroslan person, as is presented in the film, is mix of a lot of different, let's say, people. He was never like this in real life, but every small part of him was there at some point. So
yes,
I hope you can understand. It's a mixture
of different stories from loved ones
yes,
who died in the place.
yes, yes.
So that's why the film in the third part becomes like a documentary almost, right? Like people are talking to the camera, they are sharing stories about their loved ones, but we construct them as Oroslan, right?
Yes, yeah.
And like I it's a very beautiful way to recover the notion of oral transmission of stories, let's say, because I also thought about many of the stories that I've heard from my friends or my family that I never experienced personally, like a lot of people that I've never met in my life. But through these stories, I sort of have an image of them, which is something that happens with Oroslan. We never see Oroslan on screen, but we kind of imagine how he was through what the people are saying. So now I'm going to a little bit of technical questions now. The first one, of course, is about 16 millimeters shooting, which it gives a very particular color and tone to the film. And I think I would say it also helps to show the weather of the place. Like it gives you a very particular tone. So specifically talking about 16 millimeters, how did you feel shooting landscapes? Because I think that's a very, very important part of how we know the people in this place, their houses, the trees, the water. How did you feel, or how was it to shoot on film in that particular weather, for example?
Yeah, I would say when we decided to do it on 16 millimeter, it was not a problem shooting in the specific condition. It's not something that I would say it was. It was more about finding the places, finding the locations, because all the time I was thinking about how we never see this Oroslan guy in the film. How can we create this image of him in our head? So when they are speaking about, let's say that he was like that or like this, you also can help with your own memories of someone you know. So maybe you have like Oroslan as you imagine him is maybe totally different from mine, let's say, but it's correct, it's true in both ways. So then I started to think also how can this image of Oroslan reflects on one house or on one landscape, on one street. This how can it help? So by imagining that, I thought that maybe 16 millimeter also can let's say bring a little bit of distance to these things. How can we represent through the medium of film something that is not there? So that was the question or the idea, or yeah. So I thought that maybe 16 millimeter would add a little bit of this, let's say, poetic element, that it's not really one-to-one document.
Sure. How about, for example, the sound? Because again, I think it's a very important element, especially like my question about landscape was because there's a lot of big shots, like landscape shots in the film. But also when you approach people, the camera goes very, very close to their hands, to their feet, like to show gestures of the people. And whenever that happens, for example, the first thing I remember is when the coroner goes to visit Oroslan's house to check if he's alive. What we see is their feet, like walking through a path, like a modded path, and the sound like activates very, very powerfully. So, what can you tell me about the use of sound? How did you record? How big was your crew, for example?
We were very, very small crew. Let's say it was 5 people. So, but it was because of that we thought that it's the way for this specific film, the best way to work with the local people, to be like very close to them. So we were just one for the sound, one for the camera, sometimes 2, and one assistant, and that's it. So all of us had this one van, so we were driving up and down, and we were very flexible in that way. So because but for this specific element of these walking guys, we asked just for this day. We knew that we want to shoot this thing, so we asked just one person to come with a steady cam just for this day to shoot these things on that day, and then he went back to his place. So he was never all the time there. But the sound in first part, I was thinking that it's very important to use this real sound from the location, and sometimes maybe to mix it with a little bit extra follies. So most of the sound is from the location, of course.
I was also remembering, now that I'm talking about sound, whenever you are in a closed location, especially when they are working, there's like the butcher scene where they're cutting the meat. And again, I believe it's very, I suppose it's the combination of 16 millimeters and that particular sound that it makes it very immersive, like very hypnotic when you're watching how they cut the meat. But also at the very beginning, I think, or the first part, they are folding clothes, I believe. There's like a machine for where they are folding some sort of cloth. And the same, I believe, sound like puts you in a very even claustrophobic mood, I would say, for those scenes. So if you have any stories or anything that you remember from those particular scenes, especially the one in the butchers, because of course after we know a person died, when we see dead animals being cut, it also gives you a lot of emotions, right, and a lot of sensory reactions. So how was it to shoot that particular scene?
I had this idea that I was like trying to do the first part of the film, something maybe like that we would never see the whole picture, but to see just some elements that you can then put together in the whole. That was let's say the idea. And then when we moved to the next thing, to this butcher place, later we discovered that Oroslan also worked in something like here. So he was working when he was alive in some let's say how do you call it in English? I don't know. In the place like this butcher with this meat. He was working with meat. So I personally, I really love to observe people working. I love to film this working process. Let's say this mechanic working process where someone is working like with clothes or with meat, and to try to observe how they do it, how these very sharp knives are cutting this meat like nothing. So I thought that it would also like this. It would be like one element of Oroslan. So that was the idea. Not to be so, let's say, explicit, but to just in the feeling, maybe.
Okay. And now there's all these all these things that you're mentioning are very material things in the town, like very tactile things. The butcher shop or the cloth or the lunch boxes. However, there's one element which is also material, but I think it's not like a documentary. I mean, it was put in there by editing, which is the photograph, the black and white photographs,
Mm-hmm.
which come in a very specific moment of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I mean, for me, it was like a punch in the stomach, because of course it takes you back to the childhood or to the young years of a person. Where did these photos come from? I suppose that they are referencing Oroslan when he was younger.
Yeah, our son when he was younger, and his brother when he was younger. So they're together like this because it is the, let's say, the memory of his brother. So it's like remembering someone. Yeah, I decided to put these photographs in, and decided that these photos had really nothing to do with the story original or with this special landscape. So it's taken from totally another uh, another location. So I thought that it can be also something that can add to how we remember how we remember people, let's say, that were close to us.
Sure, I think, and it's a very intriguing, and I also think smart that you only use them in one moment of the film. Like it's a very punctual thing, and then the story moves on. Something very similar to that, I think. I mentioned that before, is the musical cues. If I remember correctly, it's only two, I think, two musical cues, and the one that I remember the most is when we go to springtime
Mm-hmm.
and we see like greener trees and we see the water and there's something playing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what was it? Because I'm not sure if it's a piano or a harp or what is it playing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the English word for this instrument. It's they use it a lot in this region. It's
Hmm.
when you play it, it's you have this a lot of these strings, and then you play it with this like small
Like a bow, like a
bow.
violin bow.
No. It's more like a spoon, something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but when I heard this music coming from the region, I thought it we must use it somewhere. I was very moved by this improvisation, actually. Mm.
oh, so it's not a like a recording of a bigger, like a symphony or something like that. It's
No,
something
no, no,
more
no, no. It's
regional.
just one man playing.
Oh, really?
Really.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And how did you? like when did you decide to only use it for transitions, like seasonal transitions, and not to accompany the whole film? Because I think the rest of the film is more sounds, it's more silence. Even there's this part when they are in the, like in the bar or
Mhm,
restaurant,
mhm.
and they have the television, and I think they're playing soccer, like football,
Yeah, yeah,
and no one's speaking, and only one of them says something like, "I also feel I feel terrible. I feel bad,"
yeah,
and that's it. Like
yeah,
very very small dialogue.
yeah. I, I mean, the silence also is the part of the same thing as a dialogue or the atmosphere. So I was trying to observe what happened to this specific, let's say, how do you call it? Not restaurant, but something like a bar, or
Mm-hmm.
um, just immediately after Oroslan's death. So when no one knows what to say, basically. uh, it's easier to watch the television than to speak about it, because no one knows what to add to these situations. All of them are feeling a little bit, mm, let's say, sad, or it's hard sometimes to immediately to speak about things. um, but in the third part, I thought, when this elements of more alive, with summer, with a lot of people there comes, I thought that maybe also some music from the region could be, we could add, not to be a theme through the film, but just there. And also that you don't know maybe if it's coming from the place near the lake somewhere, is there from
Mm-hmm.
some restaurant playing, or maybe it's just edit. So yeah, just as a feeling.
Yeah, because that is exactly what happened to me. Like the music starts, and I was not really sure if it was someone playing like a very small instrument, or it was like a recording, like a transitional recording. So I suppose that's what like truly spoke to me and sparked my interest, because I couldn't pinpoint what the music was, and it was very beautiful, like very dreamlike, like somehow you're dreaming, and time, you understand that time passes.
It was actually this recording was actually, was taken in some hotel, because it was this fantastic guy who played this instrument. He was really incredible. I mean, in very, very, very fantastic. But he was playing just in the one hotel for some, I don't know, Russian tourists, or like this, for earning some money. So, but he was a very good musician, for my opinion.
Oh, good. And now going back, I mean, going to the final part of the film, the interview section. I wonder if you filmed these interviews after the rest of the film, like because the characters look a little bit more comfortable with the camera. They look more present and less, I don't know how to say it, but less performative. They don't feel as much as they are being directed. They're just standing in their place telling their stories. So did you film this afterwards, and how was the process of interviewing the people in the town?
Uh, yes, exactly. It was the last thing we did, these interviews, but it was not because that we can be more close to the people than in the first part. But in the first part of the film, it was more of an idea to to have this specific, let's say, atmosphere, or the point of view, which is not very, let's say, so much a naturalistic thing, to to
Mm-hmm.
to present to represent through the media of film. But in the third part, we said that, okay, we must open the film for the people that can share these stories. So, for example, I had this original story from Zdravko Duša, and he was describing his brother like he was working there and there, and he was like that and like that. He was an epileptic. So then when I was with people in this village, I just asked them, okay, do you know maybe some epileptic from your village? Can you remember how he was like? So they start to describe their own memories about, let's say, someone who worked as a butcher, someone who was an epileptic, someone who was who had drinking problems, like all the same things that were in the original story, but from the new environment, let's say. So with this, I thought that they will be more, let's say, more that it would be easier for them to share stories, and we don't use anything from the original story. It's not the same, like, let's say, the same guy, but it's a film. It's a fictional. This Oroslan guy is not a real person. It's a fictional character made from the real events or from a lot of different people that were yeah, at some point living in a different places.
I think that's a very that could be a very good point to do the last question that I have for you, which is, I mean, this is a very good example of how fiction, like the term fiction and documentary, they are not necessarily different things.
Exactly.
Perhaps for consumers and bigger companies, like they need to separate. But I think now that you mentioned this, we have both fiction and documentary testimonies in the same character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what do you think about this divide between fiction and nonfiction, and how are you going to apply it for your future projects if you still want to work with nonfiction or with fusing the two genres, to say it in a way?
Yeah, I think I will continue to explore a little bit furthermore these options, let's say. But for for this specific film, I thought that it's very for me it was like a very organic thing to do, because I thought that it's also about one man's death, but also about storytelling itself. So whenever we are telling a story, slowly we add some elements, depends who is telling the story. So you maybe can start from something real, but slowly through the time distance, this way of storytelling this story maybe a little bit different than in the beginning.
Sure.
So but it doesn't mean that it's not true anymore. It's the way of sharing, telling story. It's not about document. It's not about let's say, it's about how can you take a story and how can you take the story in you, and then what comes out of you. You must, let's say,
Like filter.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I was
Well,
not. I never had this let's say, this idea that by doing this that we are somehow unfaithful or that we are cheating, or I never had this idea, because all the time I was thinking about Zdravko Duša's brother. I also thought about someone from my own family who had not the same but similar problems. So it was like not doing a documentary of the Zdravko Duša's brother.
okay. Well, I think that's a very good point to finish this very small interview. And I said it in Spanish in the beginning, but people do still have the chance to watch the film. It already played on streaming, but they will watch it this Friday on a real screening room with all the health precautions necessary, but I hope they can take a look at a very, very beautiful way to tell a story and to remember our loved ones that have passed. So thank you very much, Matjaž, for being with us. And I wish you luck and I wish you good health in these difficult times. Y para los que estén viendo o vayan a ver esto en el futuro, recuerden que Oroslan se pasa este viernes en la Cineteca Nacional a las 2:30 de la tarde. Y bueno, yo soy Rodrigo Garay, les mando un saludo a todos, cuídense por favor, lleven su tapabocas. Adiós.